say it, the battery life on the Pixel Fold is not that great. I'm getting on average about 5 hours of screen on time. It mostly lasts me through about the day, but under heavy usage, if I'm using the camera, if I'm using the interior screen a lot, it just doesn't quite go the distance. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how you can get better battery life on it and some steps that you can take to try and get yourself battery life to make sure that your Pixel Fold lasts through the day, and in the moments where you need the critical battery to make sure that it's there. So enough looking at my face. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. First things first, whenever it comes to the Pixel Fold and battery life, we got to go to the settings. So one thing you can do is you can swipe down and you can go to your settings, which of course is right here. But another thing you can do if you want to go straight to battery settings is you see right here the icon battery saver. If you press and hold on that, ta-da, it'll take you straight to battery saving mode, where you can of course set a schedule, turn it off whenever it's fully charged, and you can do extreme battery saver, which I have that on never use. It shuts down a lot of stuff, and we're going to talk, I'll talk about it now. So extreme battery saver, you can set up when to use this, right? And so you can put it on here, ask every time, always use, and then also never use. And then what this does, extends your battery life further in critical moments. Extreme battery saver pauses most apps and notifications. Select your essential apps so you don't miss important notifications or messages. So it basically puts it in like extreme lockdown mode to make sure your phone is going to last, like let's say you got 5% battery, 10% battery, whatever, and you want to make sure that you can at least have basic functionality until you can charge it again. So here you have your list of essential apps, and you can go through and select the ones that you don't want it to shut down, right? You don't want it to shut them off, cut off the data, and keep them from running in the background. So things that are important, of course, that are always on, system apps like messages and the phone, and of course, Twitter, if that's something you determine to be essential. But extreme battery saver, it's there. Now let's go into actual settings. So we're not going to actually get to the battery savings yet. We're going to go to display first. So when it comes to smartphones, display is the biggest thing. Like whenever you take a look at your battery metrics, what burns up the most battery? The screen does. So in here we can change and adjust a few things. So one, adaptive brightness. Now adaptive brightness, you see how it just bumped to 71%. That's what I think is ideal based off of the settings that I have in here, like the lighting right now. It adapts to your lighting sources and changes it to what it thinks is the optimum ideal battery or brightness, and that may or may not work for you. I don't really care for it. I leave mine off, but here's the thing. You can use adaptive brightness, and for some folks, it may actually help out. But if you actually have it on a more baseline brightness, so like let's say you leave it at 50% all the time, this actually gives you probably over an extra hour, hour and a half of battery life versus using it on like 100%. Now, I like to have mine up here, I like to have mine up here more towards like 85, 90%. I like having a bright screen, but I did notice whenever I turned it down quite a bit, of course, this is natural, it's common sense, you're going to get better battery life. But adaptive brightness can be your friend if you like to go that route. So, lock screen display. If you don't use the lock screen display, then you don't have to worry so much because, well, that does eat up some of the battery. So you can do one thing like always show time and info. That right there, that alone, having it where it shows always on this display like this, that's going to trickle away and eat some of your battery. So the lock screen display, if you leave it off, if you don't use it, then that's actually going to help out and save some battery. And you can also change a couple of things in here that you can have on, have off, that will impact how much battery it actually uses. But if you just leave it off, then, well, that'll save you some more battery, right? So lock screen display, if you leave it off, don't turn things on, that helps out. Now, screen timeout. You wouldn't think this would be that big of a deal, but when you get done using your phone, what do? You set it down, right? So if you have this set on 10 minutes, then it's going to sit there and keep the screen on 10 minutes after the last time you did something on your screen. Well, I keep mine usually on 5 minutes, 2 minutes, because I make videos like this, I do reviews. So the longer you have the screen timeout on, the more battery is going to waste when you're not doing anything. So I would recommend having on a minute, maybe even 30 seconds. And what that'll do is, okay, you're done with it, you set it down, and then the screen will cut off much faster. That'll save battery because you don't have the display on. So that's something that you can do. Now, let me change mine back to 2 minutes before I forget. So another thing, dark theme. So, ta-da, wow, that's nice and bright. It's glaring. It hurts your eyes, right? Especially in the middle of the night. So when you have to use your screen, if you have it on normal mode, which is light mode, you're going to have all these white pixels. It requires more battery to illuminate and make the pixels white as opposed to just leave them off, having them on where they're dark or black or dark mode. So dark mode is something that saves quite a bit of battery, and you can go in, you can set things, you can schedule it. So if you don't like having it on dark mode, if you like having it on light mode during the day but dark mode at night, then you can set a schedule for it when you want it on, custom time, or even set it for sunrise and sunset. So that's nice. Screensaver, if you have this off, that will save battery too. And then night light. So you can do this, and what it does is it color shifts everything. And if you use this at night, then you don't have the brightness up as much. It makes the tones in the light softer, reduces the blue light, but it actually does help save on battery too, because it's not as bright, and well, it's very minuscule and minimal whenever it comes to battery department, but that's something that you can do. Now this, I don't really recommend it because smooth display is one of the benefits of this phone, right? You want to be able to use 120 hertz refresh rate. Now when it comes to Google, they like to try and smartly use the software to increase the refresh rate, lower it when you do or don't need it. But if you turn it off, you're going to get better battery life because it's always going to be stuck at 60 hertz. Now, if you've come from a phone, you've always used 60 hertz, maybe you don't care. Maybe you just like having a foldable phone and you don't want to have to worry about it. Well, you'll get better battery life that way. However, I think it's part of the experience, and I highly recommend leaving it on. But if you turn it off, look, I understand. That's a judgment, personal preference call, and I'm just educating you so you know that that's one of the things that you can do. So now we've kind of covered stuff in the display. The battery is where we want to go next. So what we can do here is adaptive preferences. So you want to have adaptive battery on, and it should be on by default. Now, adaptive battery, what it does is basically, here we'll read it. It says, to extend battery life, adaptive battery may reduce performance and background activity. Some notifications may be delayed. Well, what it does is it extends the battery life based off your phone usage. This takes about a week to kick in. And I talk about this a lot because some folks are like, oh, I've had the phone for 2 days. It has terrible battery life. Well, in the first couple of days you use this phone, it's the most intensive that it's going to be while you have the phone. You're downloading things, setting things up, registering, logging into your accounts, enjoying it. You just got it. You're going to use it more, right? So it takes about a week to learn your habits. And then once it does, after about 5 to 7 days, it kind of kicks in and you do get better battery life because it knows what it needs to prioritize, what it needs to turn power on, what it can shut off in the background. However, if you don't like that and you don't like getting better battery life, you can turn it off. But I leave mine on because I want every extra ounce of battery I can get. And when I talked earlier about I get about 5 hours of screen on time, that's only using the front screen, which is primarily how I think a lot of people use this phone. When you open it, battery life gets tremendously worse because you're using this big giant canvas instead of the 5.8-inch screen on the outside. So definitely if you're like, hey, I'm getting really bad battery life, and you find that you're just using the interior screen all the time, if you close it every once in a while, then you'll get better battery life for that. So that's also a consideration. So adaptive battery, adaptive charging, that's just to help out the battery life over time. So this is not so much a, let me do this now, it's going to get me better battery life, but the actual battery health over time will save it, because what it does, it extends battery lifespan by charging steadily during longer charging periods. So if you find that your Pixel Fold gets terrible charging time, turn that off because it's limiting it and charging really slow, so it saves your battery health over the long haul. But if you want to get faster charging, turn this sucker off because it is kind of annoying. I probably won't have this phone more than a year because I'll get the new one when it comes out. I'm not overly too worried about that. So, well, YOLO, right? So some more things. Go back to battery. Now, battery saver. Now, you can use this, and this will actually get you better battery life. Now, you can turn it on. You can set a schedule, and then, of course, we already talked about extreme battery saver, but normal battery saver turns on dark theme. Turns on dark theme, limits or turns off background activity, some visual effects, certain features, and some network connections. Now, it still leaves most things on pretty well. It's not too big of a deal, but if you turn it on, you turn off when charged, but if you turn it on, then that's something that's going to increase your battery. So if you get down to like 30%, 20% battery, and you don't really want to lock things down too much, but you still want to get better battery life, turn on your battery saver. And of course, that should be in your quick settings. That's what we talked about earlier. So if we go to, we go to quick settings, it should be there. But you just turn it on, and then you're good to go. And it'll still run mostly like it's intended to work, but it limits those things we talked about. If you have light mode on, it forces dark mode, and then you'll get better battery life out of that. So that's another thing. Now, also, whenever it comes to, let's go back to, lost my train of thought. So we'll go back to battery. And then another thing that you can do is whenever it comes to battery usage. So once you go down here, this is one thing that'll help you. So you can see what your usage is at, right? So we see, oh, TikTok, 9%. I don't ever use TikTok, so I don't know why it says 9%, but either way, you can see all the different things that are on here. Like Twitter, I use that a lot more than, of course, I just pulled this off the charger, so that's probably why. So you can go down here, since usage, system usage since last full charge. You can take a look at screen time, how much Android system is using, iPhone idle, Wi-Fi, different things like that. And that's something that you can go in and go, okay, this is where my battery life is being used. And you say, okay, I use Twitter a lot. Well, if you tap on the individual item, like the individual app, you can do this. You can turn your app data on and put it on restricted. If it's using a lot of background data, which this is what this is going to do, you can turn that off, put it on restricted, and it limits the background data. So if it's running a lot and it's eating up a lot of battery when you're not actively using it, then that's something you can do. Now, optimize is based off your usage. It'll go ahead and turn stuff on and off. And then unrestricted just means it just lets it use as much data and battery as it wants to. But this can be helpful. I don't like to say blanket limit all background data, but if you go in here and you're like, all right, TikTok is using a lot of background data, I never use it, bam, put it on restricted, that'll keep it from doing that, and that'll help save you some extra battery life. So those things, I think if you go in and that's kind of okay, you got your adaptive battery kicked in, you did some individual personal settings on here, these really, I think, are the best ways that you can increase your battery life on your phone. Pick and choose what you want to enable, pick and choose what you want to disable. And this is a great way to go about doing it because you're not really compromising the performance of the phone with a lot of these, but you can extend your battery life and hopefully get some decent battery life out of your phone. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. I've made these videos in the past, and I thought it would be helpful for the Pixel Fold. I've been using it for about 2 weeks now. I've already done my full review on it. I've talked about the battery life, and I think most people will say it doesn't get the greatest battery life in the world. It gets okay battery life if you use battery saving measures, if you turn on like all that stuff, then yeah, it can go the distance a little bit better, but it's still, I think in 2023, when you take a look at the competition, if you can see what the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 has been able to do with the S23 series phones, I really wish we had that in here. And we're going to have it in the Z Fold 5 in just a short couple of weeks. So we'll really get to see what kind of battery life and how it can go the distance with that. But we're stuck with this. The Tensor 2, which we know is not the greatest on battery. We know that. We've seen it in other phones. So having it in this now, I think bumping up the battery a little bit higher, it did help out a little bit, but ultimately, it really would be nice if it got like 6-7 hours of screen on time as opposed to like 5, right? So now you've been empowered, we've seen some results, we've gone and we looked at the different options, and I've showed you ways that you can get better battery life and help extend the battery life in the event that you get one of these, or if you're concerned about it and it's just not quite making it through the day. Now, this doesn't address the heating issues that I've been having with mine, and of course, this is a well-known Tensor problem. Hopefully, we can get some more software updates. Maybe Android 14 will come along and give us a bump in the battery department and also kind of alleviate some of the sporadic heat things going on with the chip. But hopefully, this video was helpful, and it showed you a couple things you could do with your phone to really maximize the battery life for your Pixel Fold. So that's all I've got. If you have any questions or comments, of course, please go to the comments section. I'll do my best to get back with you. If you enjoyed the video, if you found this helpful, then please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.